Sunday, February 26, Oysters, art, and a junkie bike. By 2 p.m. I'd officially had enough of the roller coaster brothers. I couldn't handle another session with G-spot Tommy and decided to retreat home. I arrived at precisely 2:07. My mother wasn't there. Instead, she left a note on the table explaining that she needed a distraction and was staying with Michiel. Michiel was, in my opinion, the best date she ever had. She met him at Waterhall during one of her heartbreak phases over Santiago and had sworn off dating for 8 months. Of course, that rule didn't last. She'd been dancing with my uncle Alexander, not paying attention to anything around her, when Michiel approached and asked, "Where did your boyfriend go?" She shyly replied that Alexander wasn't her boyfriend but her little brother. And that's how Mr. Waterhall, as she first called him, asked her out. Their first date was at Amsterdam Dungeon, an unusual choice considering how terrifying theatrical she is. No time for small talk when ghosts and tortured souls are jumping out at you. Afterward, they went for drinks, then to a posh restaurant at Rembrandt Square, where they ordered 1.5 liters of wine and spent the night playing Who Am I? A game where they would ask questions like, "Were you bullied at school?" before eliminating all the ugly buggers. Or, "Have you ever been stung by a bee in your nose?" before eliminating everyone with unfortunately big noses. Of course, my mother won, and Michiel had to pay for the grand dinner. After that, things escalated. A kiss of fire liqueur filled with coffee, a stop at Lellebel, a well-known drag club, and a dangerous bike ride home later. My mom ended up in Giel's bed. Whether he was too drunk to perform or too much of a gentleman remains unclear. Eventually, she fell in love. She asked like she always did, and by fatal mistake knitted him a scarf for Sinterklaas. That's when he disappeared to London. He returned last summer and they picked up right where they left off. And now once again, she was forgetting Santiago, was laying in his arms. Since my mother was occupied, I decided to go shopping for my best friend Miriam. Miriam and I had known each other forever. We didn't need words to communicate. We understood each other's love lives and unloved lives. And we're a guaranteed disaster whenever we're together. She was turning 23 and I wanted to get her something special, something meaningful. Miriam had been ill her entire life, and yet no one I knew had more willpower nor resilience. Whenever she was well, she was like a force of nature. She would spend hours in front of the mirror transforming into an absolute diva, hitting the town like a storm, leaving a trail of speechless men in her wake. But with her illness also came loneliness and sometimes bitterness. And for that I wanted to give her something symbolic, a mineral stone, to soften, to heal, and to open the heart. And where better to find such a gift than in Amsterdam? I hopped on the train, arriving at Central Station where my trusty junkie bike was waiting for me. It had once belonged to someone else until a junkie stole it and exchanged it for a joint. It might sound harsh, but that's how things go in Amsterdam. You love a bike, you cherish it, you lock it with the strongest chain possible, and then one day it's gone, it's stolen. This was my first junkie bike, a step up from my old method of simply stealing my own bike when I lived in a village with no junkies to handle such transactions to me. And in a way, it all balances out. The junkie got his fix, the bike got a new life, and karma evened itself out. A friend of mine once told me that the men in Amsterdam are like bikes, but they don't get stolen by junkies, but by nasty bitches. This, she claims, why single women don't get married in the city. I think that there's just too many beautiful women and not enough men to go around. But this is the reason why she settles for the insecure, less attractive guys, just to be on the safe side. And who knows, maybe one of them will eventually carry her over the threshold. I set off on my junkie bike, aimlessly wandering through Amsterdam. Having only cycled in the city for about a year, I would still sometimes get lost. But somehow, no matter where I started, I would always end up at Leidseplein. I couldn't explain why, but it gave me peace. I pedaled through the city like a tourist, gazing at the old buildings, the bridges, the effortlessly stylish people. I've never been able to decide what I love most about Amsterdam, but I think it's the people. They intrigue me. Back in Zandvoort, I always felt like sort of an alien. There weren't many mad people there, and my favorite saying became, I'm not crazy, but everyone around me is, except in Amsterdam. That's where I feel like completely human and accepted. Lost in thought, I cycled happily from one unfamiliar corner to another, searching for the stone when suddenly peace turned into chaos. I licked her cheek. And then suddenly peace turned into war when a man screamed loudly, You stupid whore! Perhaps you twat would have suited me more. At least that's a name I wouldn't ignore. He stormed from his car out of thin air, but of course the air had always been there. Shame crept in and grasped my mistake. I cycled the road with no care in my wake. I'm sorry, I yelled while speeding ahead, but he and his wife chased me down instead. I feared of the tracks and crashed to the ground, heart pounding wildly, not making a sound. He grabbed my ear, her face close to mine. A surge of fear shot down my spine. In a blind reaction, I licked her cheek and she froze in shock, unable to speak. And there, amidst the heat of the fight, her eyes softened, losing their spite. For a moment, time stood still and I saw her pain, real. She'd built her walls too high to climb, fear and grief refusing time. But through the night can fester and twist, and she let it turn into an iron fist. I stroked her hair and I kissed her face, holding her there with a tender embrace. Tears welled up and she started to cry. I never quite knew the reason why. For a while we sat, her soul laid bare, releasing the weight she'd hidden with care. I told her pain was nothing to fear, that strength lies in the love we hold dear. She rose to her feet, lighter somehow, with a peaceful glow upon her brow. She turned to her husband, still stunned by it all, then kissed his forehead, while she didn't feel so small. I brushed off the dirt, got back on my bike and continued my mission. Eventually, after soaking in the beauty of Amsterdam, I arrived at the Steen en Tijdperk, a small shop on Haarlemmerstraat, where I found the perfect mineral stone for my dearest wild and wonderful friend Miriam. When I got home, my mother was waiting for me, with a look in her eyes. This might sound gross, but I know my mom. And that look, that was her I just had sex look. Knowing that she had spent the night with Michiel, probably having amazing sex, meant she had been impatiently waiting to spill every detail. She put the kettle on for tea, which instantly reminded me of G-Spot Tommy and his brother. And I sat down, smiling, ready to hear about her adventure. Michiel had taken my mother out for dinner at Lab 111, a secret little restaurant near his place in Amsterdam. The moment she looked into his eyes, she forgot about Santiago and felt starved in every sense of the word. The waiter approached, asking if they wanted the menu or a bubbly starter. Michiel opted for the drink, and my mother gave him the look, the one that says, "You know what I want." He took the hint, walked up to the waiter, and ordered meat for my mom and fish for himself, and she was satisfied. As a surprise, the waiter brought over oysters. My mother had sworn to never eat them, comparing them to either sperm or snot, but Michiel insisted. So she murdered the poor oyster, stabbing it, cutting it in half, holding her breath as she chewed. And guess what? She actually loved it. With the wine sauce, it was actually divine. After the bubbles, they ordered a bottle of South African red wine, known for its special grape variety. But the food was so good that they forgot about the wine and decided to explore the building. La 111 was an old repurposed building. Its walls, covered in supermarket posters, featured a cinema or art house films and an art gallery. They wandered through the exhibits, moving from room to room, each space with its own distinctive feel. The first room was modern art, broken television and a disturbingly ancient woman seductively licking her lips. My mother, who was only 43, really hoped that Michiel wasn't into 80-year-old sex symbols. The second room had a strange cinema with a cushion-covered floor. That's where the real fun began. She kicked off her heels playfully, throwing the cushion at Michiel. He tackled her, covered her in pillows, and kissed her passionately, until another couple walked in. Giggling, they straightened up and moved on. The next exhibit featured a great black tree with drooping branches. It reminded my mother of Henrietta's painted black roses, and sadness hit her. Sensitivity runs deep in our family, and she rushed into another tiny room, only to be greeted by a very unexpected sight, a movie of a man and his penis. Lab 111 must be the weirdest place, I muttered as she continued her story. The final room was the dark room, a pitch black space where they had to wait for their eyes to adjust. Just as they settled in, the same couple from before walked in. My mother and Michiel still playfully crept up on them, and just before their bodies met, shouted, "Boo!" The couple screamed and ran for their lives. Laughing, my mother and Michiel snuck back into the restaurant. He had to walk in with a very noticeable boner, while my mother held his hand, playing the innocent angel. The waiter smirked. This was clearly not the first couple to enjoy an in-between course exercise. They sat down and finally finished their wine. Now you see why my mom and I are such good friends. She's rules. She's so freaking cool, and I honestly hope I grow up being just as awesome as my mom.